Perfect. Thank you, Pat. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be here this afternoon. My name is Pam Krank. I own a company called the Credit Department, tcd.com. We're so old that we have a website with 3 letters in it, which is great for us. We've been offered lots and lots of money for that website over the years. About once a month, I get an offer for the website. The highest has been $100,000. So I've said, no, that site drives our business, not interested in selling that. But in the days when we started before the internet, when the internet came about, everybody was taking things like Coke.com and IBM.com, and then they were holding them hostage until somebody paid for them. So go ahead and sit there. I'm just at the end there. You can step right over my stuff. I've been in business for 25 years. Wow. We'll be 25 years in January, actually, which coincides with the birth of my first child, which I had in September of 1991. And after he was born, then 3 months later, I launched the Credit Department. I do not recommend having babies and starting a company at the same time. Was exhausting. I'm still tired from that. I did what a lot of entrepreneurs did. I quit a corporate job, very good paying job I had at 3M out on the West Coast, and started a company that did exactly what I did when I was in 3M as a credit manager. So I manage credit for companies all over the world. About $500 million every day is under management by the Credit Department. I started the business not knowing anything about how to start a business or meet people, so it's great that you're out here meeting people. I happened to run into a banker who understood the importance of managing receivables. Our job is to turn this receivable into cash as quickly as we can. So every day I look at that $500 million, 200,000 invoices that we are responsible for managing and turning into cash on a daily basis. So that is what our clients charge us with. We work mainly in mid-market manufacturing. Our typical client's about $150 million. They have global operations, so we're managing credit in Africa, in Asia, in South America, where we spend our winters now. My husband and I are now empty nesters. So we do not live in Minnesota in the wintertime anymore, hallelujah. We travel around South America all winter because we built a business that now has the cloud. We didn't even have the internet when I started. Now we have the cloud, and so we do not have servers anymore. I don't have to pay IT people. I just use rack space, which holds all of our data, and then I pay them a fee every month. So that means I can just get up and go and work from wherever, which also means our 22 people can do exactly the same. So they can go out and work from wherever as well, which is how we retain really talented analysts. We analyze all the risk before our customers sell to anybody on credit. I'm going to teach you how to avoid selling on credit here today so you don't get into some of the traps they did. And also then how to make sure they get paid on time, because that's how they're managing their cash flow. Yes, the banks are important, but we trade creditors represent a much bigger market when it comes to financing, and that is we give credit on a trade basis. So we sell the product, our client manufactures the product, sells it, and then we're responsible for making sure those customers pay our clients. That's the gist of our business. I'm going to talk today about common mistakes. Most of the cash flow opportunity for companies, whether they're in the startup phase or the growth phase or the mature phase, is sitting right there. It's sitting in your accounts receivable when you're billing your customers and making sure that that turns into cash. So I'm going to talk about receivables here for the bulk of my talk, but I want to start by talking about the biggest mistakes I see entrepreneurs make. I'm in a unique position. Not only do I analyze financial statements for a living for the companies who want to buy from our clients, I'm also on the back end dissecting bankruptcies, companies that have fallen apart, failed, companies who have defaulted on their loans, to find out what happened to them. At what point should we have known as creditors, and what started to unravel with these businesses. So I have a unique perspective here as someone who's trying to prevent these things from occurring, or at least being the creditor. So I'm going to talk about these common mistakes. Spending money you don't have, extremely common. I ran into that as well when I started. Chasing only the sale and not worrying about the cash, extremely common problem for entrepreneurs. The use of contracts or the lack thereof, we'll talk about that. Being a creditor and not understanding you're a creditor is something I'm going to hopefully teach you how to avoid being a creditor. You don't want to be in my business. It's very expensive to make mistakes in my business, which is why companies pay us so much money to manage those big assets, is because they have already written off millions of dollars before they come to us and say, please make sure this doesn't happen to me again. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about that. How to bill. This is a mistake entrepreneurs make, is they just bill the invoice and then every day they run to the mailbox. I remember these days. Please God, let there be a check in there. Or I hope there's I'm sure a lot of you don't know this, but oh my goodness, that was a big problem for us in the beginning. How do we avoid this issue? And finally, when you get into trouble, if you have cash flow problems, the mistakes I see is you don't talk to us. When I call you for money and you owe me money and you ignore me, I've got an issue. I'm probably getting very nervous on the other end. I might do something to you that's going to hurt your business. So we'll talk about that mistake here as well. Just remember, if you've never heard this before, the companies that fail, they don't run out of assets. They don't run out of sales generally. They run out of cash. Nobody cares about all these things that have not cleared yet. Your pipeline that has not materialized. If you fail or when you fail, it's because you didn't watch the cash. You ran out of cash. People like me then come after you for any way we can in order to get paid. That brings up point number one, and my apologies to people who are more on the secured lending side. Don't sign personal guarantees. You don't absolutely have to sign. Your secured bankers are going to make you sign personal guarantees. Do not sign those out in the market to your unsecured creditors, because we will come after your personal assets if you just routinely sign personal guarantees. So don't sign them. All right? I will tell you that as someone who chases people who sign guarantees. The first mistake I see, and I did this exact same mistake, is we entrepreneurs, we spend money we don't need to be spending. We don't think long enough to decide, is this a good investment for me? We have to ask ourselves three things. Do I really need this? Okay, a business is not a person who says, this makes me feel better. I'm going to buy this because I love carrying around that Starbucks cup. I look so successful. No. Business, the only reason you should ever buy anything is because it's going to increase your revenue or decrease your costs. That's it. And that's, if you sell to companies, that's why they buy from you. They're going to buy from you because you're going to increase their revenue or decrease their costs. That's it. So we need to be asking, do I really need it? Will this investment pay off? And I always say, is there a less expensive way to get this done? Do I have to buy the cream of the crop? When I started the business, like I said, there was no internet. If you can imagine, we had to go to the library and research the St. Paul Hill Library. I learned very, very well because that's how I did my research on my business. But I bought things from people I liked who told me I needed it for my startup. I didn't ask myself these three questions. I made some really stupid purchases early on because I thought it was something I needed. I see this in entrepreneurship. I taught entrepreneurship at the University of St. Thomas, and I would look through these plans and say, what the heck are you doing? Why are you spending all this money? You don't need to be spending all of this money. Ask these questions first. One of the big mistakes companies make when they say, I'm going to hire a salesperson, or I'm going to go spend money on this trade show, or I'm going to buy these these gifts for my prospects, is when you spend $1,000, it doesn't mean when you sell $1,000, you're even. You need to look at your profit margins. If you're a high margin business, how many service businesses do we have in here? A lot of service businesses. Okay, the highest margin businesses are services. Service and tech. For us, we're a technology company that provides a service and vice versa. Our margins are very, very high. Our net margins, 30, 40%. Okay, that's great. I can take a lot more risk for those of you in a manufacturing or distribution or a retail business where your margins are much, much smaller. You need to know what that net margin is. Look at the very bottom line on your profit and loss statement and divide that by your sales. That's your net margin. When you spend money, the lower your margin, the higher the return must be on sales. So if you're going to hire, I put an example up here, a $50,000 sales rep, and you work in a typical business that has a 10% return, net margin, that new sales rep of yours is going to have to generate another $500,000 in revenue for you to break even. $500,000, not $50,000 that you hired to pay her, $500,000. Don't go out, don't be hiring your friends, your relatives to give them work, unless you're a nonprofit in the charity business and you're trying to help these people, don't do it. Just say no. I can't afford it. It's fine. I still say that today. No, I can't afford it. We always have to look at what is the trade-off going to be. I'm either going to spend money to get rid of an expense. So our clients, they outsource their receivable management to us. They're already spending millions of dollars writing off bad credit decisions. So they say, hey, I'll pay you $500,000 to prevent this from happening. They're just trading one expense for a much lower expense. If I were in a marketing business, sales business, they're going to invest in me because I'm going to be able to create this multiplier. So once you figure out your margin, divide your expense by that number to know how much additional sales it's going to take for you to break even. I guarantee you will be shocked at how much it actually takes. It's so hard to bring that revenue in. I know it. I've lived it. That you don't want to be spending money you don't have to spend. Okay? That's a big mistake, number one. Number two is entrepreneurs, oftentimes, how many of you came out of sales? You started a business, you're good sales people, that's great. I am not. I'm pretty good on the marketing side. I speak all over the world on managing trade receivables. Not so good on the sales side. I wait for somebody to call me and say, we need you, and I say, okay, here's my schedule. Here's when I can fly here to Texas or Singapore or wherever it is. That's how I sell. Pretty sad, pretty sad. A lot of people, though, are very focused on increasing revenue. It doesn't matter what you sell if your customer can't pay you, right? If you can't get that money in the door, it makes absolutely no difference what you are able to sell. We have to stay focused on the cash. Do not go out there and offer net 30 terms. Most of you probably heard of net 30, right? Unless you're a manufacturer. If you're in the manufacturing business or in the distribution business where you are forced to offer 30-day terms, do it. Otherwise, your term should be due upon receipt. Your due date is the same as your invoice date. That's how I bill. I bill every 2 weeks because my payroll is every 2 weeks. It needs to match, my cash coming in needs to match the timing of my cash going out. If you ship product, you bill every single day. You bill as you ship. If you do service businesses, you do not wait till the end of the month and give the customer this big invoice. First of all, they'll always find something wrong with it. It's too big. It's a lot more than I thought it was going to be. No. You bill weekly, you bill bi-weekly, you do not wait until month end to issue those invoices. Net 30 comes from us, those of us in manufacturing. My background was at 3M, the job that I quit to start this business, because you're supposed to be selling something to somebody who's going to make something else with the product. We're in the steel business, we're in the lumber business. We're always selling to somebody who's going to do something with that product. So we give them 30 days to make something, sell it, get paid, and pay us. If you're a service business, get out of the net 30 business. Bill quickly and make sure you have very short terms. If you're doing consulting work, if you're making custom products, you always get down payments. Because we don't want a contract signed where we work for 90 days and we're so excited we're going to get paid now. That's great. I've got college tuition coming up. And then you invoice them and it's going to take a while to pay that. No. We get payments up front. Hopefully at least a third down. Half down is even better. And then half upon delivery. When you give them that report or whatever that is, do not wait until the end. They will find ways not to pay you. You should try to get out of the check business. In Europe, we don't do any checks anymore. Everything is electronic. So what we do on our invoices is we give them the ACH information with the routing number, the account number, so that they can pay us instantly. So we're getting that payment. So when I bill, I just billed on Friday, I will have all of my receivables collected by next Friday. So I give them 2 weeks. And if we don't have the payment within that 2 weeks, we are calling them to say, I'm sorry, something must have happened to the electronic transmission. We didn't get it. So we're tracking them down. I'll talk about that in just a moment. If you sell a product and you've got a cost, let's say it's 50% to manufacture to sell this chair, get the cost of the product before you start making it, because otherwise you're going to be stuck with a lot of products you can't sell to anybody else. When at all possible, focus on making sure that cash is coming in very quickly. Do not get complacent here, because you'll be out financing. They always say, well, the good news is you got a contract with Costco or Walmart or whoever. We work with all of the big retailers. The bad news is you got a contract with these guys, because now you have to get them to pay you. So you have to stay focused on how you're going to get paid. We work on retainers for people we don't know all the time. They will wire me $10,000, $20,000 before I even start the project, because we require it. I'm not going to spend money, I get on an airplane and fly around the country or around the world until someone has paid me money to do that. You get burned once on that, and then you'll say, I remember that speaker saying, don't ever do that without getting paid, because somebody's not going to pay you at some point. So third mistake, not using contracts. If you are in the credit business, if you are giving anybody terms, meaning you're issuing invoices, and you haven't been paid, you're not McDonald's, you're not getting paid for the hamburger as you hand it to them. The rest of you are all in the credit business. Whether you like it or not, you need a contract. You need a contract where the customer says, I agree to pay this for this price under these terms. And my email will be at the end if anybody needs a sample contract. I didn't bring them written because it's a pain in the neck. I'll send it to you in Word. You can edit as you like. But a standard contract basically just says, here are what the issues are, here's when you're going to pay me. Because if you have to sue this out someday or you get into a dispute, the contract rules. You need to clearly define the expectations. It'll be a whole lot easier to get paid and resolve issues. If you don't have contracts with your customers, their purchase order rules. So if you have a contract that says net 30 on it or net 10, and they send you a PO and it says net 90 on it, guess what? It's net 90 now. So when you get those POs, somebody needs to check it. Make sure the price matches, make sure the terms match. Cross off their terms and send it back to them and say, you are wrong. We do this to the biggest companies in the world. We work in oil and gas, it's our biggest industry. We will send POs back to Exxon and say, you are wrong, Exxon. You agreed to net 20 days, which they never do. Net 90, not net 180 days. And here are the penalties for not paying us on time. So make sure you use a PO. If you have any kind of liability concerns, anything where you are doing credit work, make sure you get contracts. If you don't have a contract, it's a he said, she said, and someone will screw you someday. I guarantee it. Even I've been screwed by not having contracts because it was a referral source who was very important to us. We didn't do what we thought we should have done, and we should have had a contract. So always, always, always. Mistake number 4 is you become a creditor. Now you're in my business, but you have no idea what you're doing. You have now gotten into the credit business not understanding. Your job is to avoid risk. Don't extend credit when you don't have to. Don't be foolish enough to say, do you want me to send an invoice? If you're a print shop, someone's coming in, you take their credit card. Let Visa, MasterCard worry about it. You should not be in the credit business unless you absolutely, positively have to be. Do not give credit to consumers. They're a lousy risk. We stopped doing consumer risk in the 80s. It shouldn't be something you're involved in. Visa, MasterCard, use those little square things, whatever they are, to get your credit card charged right away. Don't give credit to political groups. None, zero. They're deadbeats. They will not pay you. Don't do it. The best option if you don't do credit card is automatic EFTs. So we work for an oil business where they put the RTI here, Restaurant Technology, down in Mendota Heights. They sell to 20-some thousand restaurants, all the oil that they use to fry things. So we're the ones who approve those oil shipments. We're the ones who collect from restaurants. Do we have restaurants in here at all? Okay, very risky business. Lots of failures. We don't allow them on credit unless it's the same month. So we bill them, we collect it. We bill them, we collect it. How do we do that? They fill out a form. They fill out a form that says, go ahead and charge me on the 10th of every month for my deliveries that I've done in the last 30 days. That's how you can get out of the credit business, or your losses will be very, very small. because retailers have such a high risk of default, we hold them very, very tight to terms. So that's an example. If anybody needs an example of that form, I have that form too I can send to you. If you have to go into the credit business because you're a consultant or you're working with manufacturers, large companies, have them sign a credit application that says, here's who you're supposed to bill. Here's when we require a purchase order. Again, there's examples out there. I just gave you one of the websites. Our industry is called the National Association of Credit Managers. That's one of the local offices where you can get a one-page credit application. If someone gives you a credit application, don't sign the personal guarantee. If they tell you you have to sign the personal guarantee, put your title next to it. It invalidates the personal guarantee. Okay, just a little tidbit there on how to screw your creditors if you don't pay them someday. Okay, so make sure you understand that. These are some examples. If you sell to public companies, if you've heard of the company...
Does the title have to be valid?
No. It doesn't matter.
Anytime.
All you're doing is guaranteeing that you are that president, or what. That's it. How would I know that? Because I've gotten screwed by somebody doing that to me. That's right. That's how I know. You never do that. Okay. Public companies. Just because you've heard of them does not mean they're good credit risk. Okay. If they're a public company, go out on Yahoo Finance. If their stock price is under $3, the risk of default is very high. You do not want to go into that totally on trade credit without any money up front. Always, there's only one thing I care about. I teach how to analyze financial statements. It's the cash flow statement. I just want to say, how much cash flow is being provided by operations? Are they able to generate enough cash to pay their bills? If that's a negative number, get cash up front. If it's positive, and it's been positive quarter after quarter after quarter, they're probably a pretty good credit risk. We always say if the price is under $3, be very, very concerned about that. Private companies, probably most of your risks, if you're doing billing, is going to be in the private sector. You really, for little risks, under $10,000, we just say they're either good or they're not. If they're good for it, they won't have any judgments or liens or anything like that, bankruptcies. You can go buy a report, I think, for $10 on nox.com, which is a part of LexisNexis, who we use for these things. Then you can make sure that they haven't been in trouble and screwed the last 20 suppliers they've used, and now you're just next in line. So we use that on the small dollar risk. If it's a bigger credit risk, then we get bank information. We can pull a DMB on big companies. They're the best for large companies. Otherwise, you can get Experian. You can go on the internet and find trade credit reports. Even on our website, you can find trade credit reports. But if they're not paying anybody on time, they're probably not going to pay you either. Do not kid yourself. If someone is going to deal with a startup, sometimes they're doing that because they've already screwed other people. So they're looking for the next sucker. If you get a big order out of California and you don't even have a presence in California, you don't even have a rep there, you don't have anybody you've ever done, be very careful about doing business with people you do not personally know. All right, so that's how we get that information. Mistake number 5 is small businesses will bill and then pray to God the money comes in. I sent the invoice, I just can't wait for the money to come in. No, just like I said, you need to bill as often as you can. I know it sounds like a pain, but there aren't any big companies out there that don't bill and as soon as they can. You bill as fast as you can. That's really, really an important job in your company. Hopefully you've got somebody you can outsource that, or you've got somebody internally who can bill so you don't get behind in billing. It's a really dumb thing. Now you're going to be financing your customers, which makes absolutely no sense. Coordinate the billing like I do. I bill every 2 weeks. I do payroll every 2 weeks. Okay? Makes sense. Service business. We follow up to make sure the customer got the invoice and it's in the system. Do not send your invoices to the guy who bought from you without sending it to accounts payable, who's going to be your friend. These are the people who are going to process your invoice. Make sure they get a copy of it as well. In that application or in the contract, ask, who do I send an invoice to? Don't just send it to the product guy who ordered something from you. Get it over into finance, because if it's not in their queue to pay, you're not going to get paid. You're going to rely on this guy who's going to have it sitting on his desk somewhere or his inbox. The ACH information is really important to get on your invoices, to get paid electronically. It's a lovely, lovely thing. I look at that every morning to see how much money I get in overnight. Very exciting. Don't have your sales guys or girls, women, do your collections. Just don't. Let them be the one out there, selling. They like to use us. Well, if it were up to me, I'd give you those 90 days. But the credit department, they're such a pain. That's why we have the name credit department that we do, because in the old days, we didn't have all the sophisticated telephone systems like we do now. We were in my basement. I had 7 people in my basement before my husband threw us out, said you need to get a real office. And we just answered the phone, credit department. So for us, we did not want the rep who was out there selling to be the one collecting. It's always got to be the people in finance. Have somebody else do it who's actually in there. Unless you're the only person in the company, obviously you have to do everything then. Follow up. Do not take excuses for an answer on why they have not paid. Do not divide your receivables up in your company. Well, we've got 4 owners, so we're going to divide. No, don't divide the aging. It's just a mess. Have one person responsible for getting you paid. They are ultimately responsible. Follow up. We follow up on our big invoices every single week for our clients. We have a major delinquent account. Sometimes that's $1 million, sometimes it's $5,000. We're following up every single week, and we track all of our notes. Don't ship 5 minutes left. Don't ship or provide service to customers who didn't pay you the last time, because you are going to dig a hole so deep for yourself. Don't do it. The reason companies hire us is because they've been doing that forever. At one point, they were a startup business, right? And they were sort of desperate to get business, so they might have done things for a little cheaper than they should have. They might have given a little longer terms, but almost all of them make the big mistake of continuing to provide service to people who never had any intention of paying them to begin with. So if they're having cash flow problems, do not make that your problem. As soon as you pay me the last one, I'll ship you something new. We have people who come to us with COD cash for orders, but who didn't pay us for the last orders, and we say, absolutely not. We're not shipping you anything until you pay the last orders. Then you can start buying something from us again on cash. You're now on cash now because you're too slow. Okay, what do we do with those customers who won't pay? We go right back to that nox.com and we look and see how many people have not been paid by them. Maybe you didn't do a credit check in the beginning and you just thought they were good for it. Now you're going to go back and say, holy crap, they never paid their federal tax liens, state tax liens, they never paid the creditors, my competitors. Find out how long the line is. In the state of Minnesota, you can go to court, to conciliation court, if you've never done this, up to $15,000 if someone has not paid you. You can go in there, I think it's a $70 fee or something. And if you've never been to conciliation court on either side, just watch Judge Judy or one of those lame shows that shows you how to go in there and say, I have not been paid, here's my invoice, and then get the judgment against them. I'm hoping you guys never have to worry about this because you're going to do that credit check up front, right? You're going to make sure. If you ever get a big deal, anybody in here ever gets a big deal, and you're scared and you want to know, keep my email address at the end and we'll run it for you. We'll tell you what they look like. Don't give up on getting paid until you know that company is insolvent, that they've got nothing else to give you. That means a third party needs to tell you. If we don't get a judgment against somebody, because we have risks all over the world, we'll hire an agency for small risks, or we will go to a law firm. There's a good law firm here locally, and they all work on contingency. They don't get paid until you get paid. Do not pay your corporate lawyer to chase debts. That's not what they do best. It's too expensive. Have somebody who's an expert on getting you paid, and then when they get paid, when you get paid, then they get paid. So that's all you should worry about in the end. I'm hoping you never have to worry about this. We have hundreds of files in this situation because we inherit this mess that nobody ever dealt with. And they kept shipping to them. And so now instead of having a $5,000 debt, they have a $25,000 debt. Okay, my last mistake is not communicating with your vendors when you get into trouble. Now you have cash flow problems, God forbid. This is probably going to happen to everybody in here at some point. Almost every entrepreneur runs into problems. It is not the end of the world. I have almost killed our business twice. I have gotten down to about $150 when we lost 82% of our revenue overnight because I got into a fight with a nasty CEO down here in Bloomington. And I told him to take his business, and I wasn't very nice about that. But that contract left. Having a one main customer is a danger signal. If you start with one main customer, good for you. Get out there and sell to somebody else. Banks don't like it. We don't like it in the risk business. But if you get behind with me, don't avoid my calls, because I'm going to start to get nervous and jumpy, and I'm probably going to start to check you out and see if I should start suing you. Remember, I got those attorneys on commission. So I got all the time in the world. You're going to have to pay a lawyer to defend yourself here. You need to tell us the truth of what's going on. Hey, I've got a big check. I've got a big payment coming in from Japan that hasn't hit yet. I expect it next Friday. Don't make up a story. Tell us the truth. Whatever you can send me now, send it to me. Tell I'm good faith. I'm going to pay you. I will send you $1,000 today. Here's the money to keep me interested in you, keep me keeping the file in-house without hiring somebody else. Give me something each week or each month. When I almost lost TCD 10 or 12 years ago, I never stopped paying my vendors. Even if I paid them a few $100s, they knew I was working on it. I had no issues whatsoever with those vendors. So don't hide. We will find you. We will take everything you have. Make sure you tell us what's going on. And if you have a lender where you have signed a personal guarantee, because they'll make you sign a real personal guarantee, that's not going to work to put your title when you're doing it with a lender. Be honest. Our lender allowed us to go down to interest-only payments. We didn't pay any principal for 6 months while we rebuilt the business. They did not want to write off $200,000 in debt. They wanted us to pay that as well, and thank God all of that is now done. At one point we had $650,000 in debt, and we paid every last dime of it. Doesn't always happen, but these are the lessons that we learned to make sure everybody was okay with the process. So make sure you communicate with us. So finally, in summary, when you're managing this business, think about everything you're spending money on and see if it really makes sense to you. Is this a good investment? Am I going to see that payoff? Use those formulas we talked about. Don't just concentrate on getting a customer. It's lovely to get customers. At some point, you're going to be like I was telling Kristen, I would love to only have one new customer every quarter. That would be my goal. They don't come like that. It's very difficult for us because we work for big investment firms. They'll send us 2 or 3 at a time, and it's really sometimes overwhelming. But you have to stay focused on the cash. Don't get arrogant because you start to sell millions and millions of dollars that I don't have to worry about the cash anymore. Remember, I'm out there working for billion-dollar companies that still can't manage the cash, so they have us do it instead. Don't give credit unless you absolutely positively must. Visa, MasterCard for consumers, no credit there. Use contracts. You'll have my email address here shortly if you want a copy of a standard contract. Bill as often as you can and keep following up with that customer, because when they know you're calling, they're going to pay you before they're going to pay somebody else who just sends them a statement or something. Keep calling them. Keep that cash flowing in. And finally, don't avoid communication with your vendors when and if you get into trouble. I'm sure I went over my 20 minutes or whatever. 25 years of running a business teaches you a lot. You want to save questions, or do you want them to ask questions now?
Do questions afterwards.
Perfect. There's my email address. Don't call me. You'll never get a hold of me. But email me, and I answer my emails from anywhere in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.